Hey, it's the King of Connecticut, Matt Granahan, here at the Berman Law Group, and we have a very special guest. And what started out, ironically, as a secret society on the island where my own parents and grandparents immigrated from has become a part of virtually every aspect of American popular culture. From movies, The Godfather, Goodfellas, Bronx Tale, to television shows, The Sopranos and Wise Guy, to historical events, the Kennedy assassination, the disappearance of Jimmy Hoffa. Virtually every aspect of American history and culture and popular culture is incomplete without an examination of the life. And we are so lucky to be here with a man who has led that life, the author of the life, my friend, Larry Mazza.
Oh, thank you. That intro is too much. I got to tell you, you get better with it every time we sit down.
Yeah, we've sat down before. Yes, we should let people know. I started out interviewing you for the Hannibal TV, which is Canada's top combat sports podcast. This whole mob genre is just exploding and taken off in the podcast world, and they wanted to get into that genre. I had interviewed Tony Knapp before in my old podcast, and knew some guys from the life, and I reached out to you, and we've now done 4 or 5 of these.
Well, what helped was, don't forget, I have a martial arts background.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I still own a gym.
Absolutely.
And I taught kickboxing, so that was a perfect lead-in for us.
Yeah.
And then we got to my past.
Definitely.
Even though I was part of the Colombo family, one of the 5 crime families in New York for many years, I also had another life. I was normal at one point.
Sure.
And I was a martial artist, and I taught martial arts. I was a basketball coach. I played every sport there is to be played. But then came that fateful time I met a woman and it took me in another direction. But we'll get to that.
Those women.
We'll
Can't trust them.
We'll get to that.
Yes.
So Larry, you talked about martial arts, and for any martial arts fans, they're going to know Louis Neglia.
Yeah.
They're going to know Don the Dragon Wilson. Talk a little bit about your past in martial arts and kickboxing.
Well, I started out at 12, and I believe it was Taekwondo. My father was a lieutenant in the fire department, and he brought me there. I spent maybe a year or 2 at the most there. Then a local legend, Louis Neglia, was coming on the scene as a champion and opened up a kickboxing gym.
Yeah.
So I was probably about 13, and I started with him. I spent several years there. Then when I traveled to Florida a lot also, and while I was down there, I went with Donnie Wilson, Donnie Hare, other great pros,
Yeah.
And I just kept learning more and more and more, and I'm a better instructor than fighter. I like to avoid getting hit. So that was part of martial arts. You don't have to get hit.
Absolutely.
You don't want to get hit.
And what style of martial arts? I find that interesting. My husband is actually a firefighter and was a black belt in Kempo karate.
Oh, okay. Kempo is very good. Yeah,
Okay.
It's serious stuff. Well, we were Goju, Jiu-Jitsu,
Okay.
Karado, which a lot of people never heard of, and American kickboxing.
Okay.
The funny thing about Karado, it was Grandmaster Warren Siciliano, who was from Florida, and somehow or another Louis Neglia hooked up with him for years, but he wound up devising his own system also, Louis. Yeah. So I've kept that in my life even through the years in prison. It kept me in shape. It kept me, flexible. My mind, because a lot of martial arts is your mind also,
Absolutely.
and being strong mentally and physically. So it helped.
And you're still in great shape. We just worked out together yesterday.
Yeah, thank you.
And Larry has a really nice gym. We featured his gym in my interview with the Hannibal TV, and it's right there on Merritt Island. It's got everything you need in a gym. Weight gym, a huge martial arts area.
A
dojo. And in the back, he's setting up for an obstacle course. It's pretty awesome. Outside area.
Yeah, that's getting super popular now too.
Oh, yeah.
Like that, the ninja style of training.
Yeah. I used to call it boot camp Now it's called all kinds of different things,
Right.
but it's still to me a boot camp. You go out there, you got ties, you got the ropes.
Oh, yeah.
Pull-up bars.
Functional training.
Jumping.
Yep.
The jump boxes, we built them.
That's
cool. The bad news is my son just broke his foot, who's running my place, dropping a railroad tie as we were building, and he's going to be out of commission for several months. But
rough.
I know. So.
And he was in good spirits. We visited his son a couple times the last couple days, and for considering he cracked the main bone in his foot, he's in good spirits about it. You know?
So.
I can safely say I would be the exact opposite. I would not be in great spirits about that.
So you say your husband's a firefighter?
Yes, he
God
is.
Bless him. Thanks for his service.
Yes,
My
thank
dad
you,
was
thank
a
you.
lieutenant for 25 years.
Yeah, it's not an easy gig.
Yeah, not at all.
And Larry, that's interesting you say that, because before you got into the life, your father was a firefighter and lieutenant, and you ironically were studying criminal justice at John Jay, right?
Yes, I was. After high school, my father would have sent me to any college I wanted to go, within reason. But I wasn't really a solid student. I was smart, and I got A's and B's without applying myself. I didn't study. So he knew I didn't really like school. I was just going through the motions. So he sort of guided me into his career, because he became a lieutenant and said, with my smarts, I can easily be a chief. You could be at the top of the game. So I did. I went to John Jay College of Criminal Justice. I took police science, fire science, psychology, English, which I got an A in writing, an A-, and that helped me later on too, as did the psychology class. So that was my game plan. I was working 2 or 3 different jobs, a delivery boy. I was working in a catering hall, like as a waiter, busboy type of thing. And I was only 17, And I did take the test eventually. I got a 99 on the written, a 95 on the physical, and I was going to be called. But
you were delivering groceries.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to get to that.
Yeah.
The reason, even before that, the test was put on hold because back in the 70s, there was women's movements and minority movements, and they were complaining the test was too hard. Now, the physical was tough for a girl.
Right.
Now, I can see you're in good shape, so you could probably pass it. But a
No,
lot of
actually,
girls
I probably could not.
were complaining about that. So it was put on hold, and in that time, while I was on my delivery job, I met this woman. And, at the time, she was an older woman. She was like 31.
Oh, God.
And I was like 17.
She was an older woman.
Well, now I got to say what I do for a 31-year-old.
I know.
Even though
Me being 33, hearing...
His wife is gorgeous, gorgeous woman.
I'm not, looking for any... But
We got
it's
it.
just funny how the age thing. Then she was an
No,
older woman.
100%. I used to look at my friends' older brothers who were like 24 and thought they were so old.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, oh my God, I work with 24-year-olds and I feel like the old person.
Yes. So what happens is I'm delivering groceries, and I delivered to her house. Her name was Linda. And we started getting friendly. She was very nice. She would always offer me soda or water, then wine. But I said, no, I'm still working, I can't. And she thought that was so cute that I was naive and I wouldn't drink, especially on the job. And ultimately, she, we got real close, and she came out and asked me if I fooled around. Now, I'm 17.
All right.
She didn't know. I told her I was 18.
Oh, okay.
So
Smooth.
No, she can't get her in trouble for statutory stuff. And there was no way I'm even looking for that. But I lied to her and told her I was 18.
Right.
So. But she also lied and said she was 29. She didn't want to be 30. So
Classic.
we started off on a good foot. But anyway, when she asked me that, again, this is 70s we're talking. I looked at her and I says, of course I fool around. You think I'm gay? That was my answer. And she busted out laughing like you just did. So we wound up becoming lovers, okay, to cut to the chase. And it went on for almost 10 years. Okay. In the meantime, little by little, I find out more about her. I found out she had kids. I still didn't press it. I figured she was separated. Then she mentions her husband is always traveling. So now I'm feeling a little different about it. This is maybe a month or 2 in. But still, at that age and the chemistry, this was something I didn't want to stop. A little more time goes by. I find out that he does a lot of traveling. See, it's hard for me to tell because of things I know from later on, but at that point I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know he was a mob guy.
Right.
But I thought he was a traveling salesman or something like that. So again, a few more months goes by, and we're getting so close that she wants me there every night. And some nights he's home, so I can't be there, and she calls me, what are you doing tonight? It was getting crazy.
Right.
And I was starting to feel guilty because now I know she was married. But ultimately, she starts insisting on me meeting him and telling me that he can do a lot for me. He's very influential. So still, I'm not putting my mind that he's anything but some big shot businessman.
Right.
Now that I'm not on the fire department anymore, that thing is put on hold. She offers me a position in her husband's company. And she says, he'll take you on and you'll be the sales manager. And she explains this whole company they have, which is fire extinguisher service and them selling products to restaurants and things like that.
Right.
So it sounds good. And I says, okay, I'll meet him. So this was like one of the defining moments in my life, and it's in the book. I remember that day I had to get to her house about 5, because that's what time he comes home. Okay. So I get there about 20 to 5.
By the way, I just want to pause here. I'm thinking as you're 17, 18 years old, sleeping with a grown man's wife, and now just waiting to meet him.
Yeah, no,
just totally normal.
Right. I'm not trying to
it would
speed
right.
everything here, but
Right.
I mean I can get into details that we'll need the whole weekend.
Right.
You can't go home.
Right.
You'll have to sit here with me for the whole weekend. So obviously I'm trying to get...
No, I know.
Yeah, but you're right. It's very... So here's what happens. I get there at 20 to 5. And now I take the drink. I said, I'll take that drink, Linda. Whatever it was, she gave me a vodka or wine.
Yeah, no more wine. It's got to be stronger now.
Yeah, you got anything stronger than this?
So, and I'm standing at the window watching the cars pull up. I want to see what this guy looks like when he pulls up. So what pulls up? A big black Fleetwood Barone from the 70s, like a 79, okay? Tinted windows, spoke hubcaps, wheels. The door opens slowly. This guy gets out. He's dressed like me right now. I mean, he's, well, I'm hoping it's sharp. He's super sharp.
Right.
He's got dark sunglasses on, and it's getting dark out because it's wintertime. And the clocks change. 5 o'clock, it gets dark in New York.
Yeah.
Or the East Coast. And he's got jewelry. He's got a big watch on. He's got a diamond ring. I see all this as he's strutting, swaggering around the driveway to come up the steps. Okay? So as he comes up the steps, I open the door, and I put my hand out, and I say, hi, I'm Larry. And he says, I'm Greg. And he puts his hand out, shakes my hand. I got taken aback because all along she told me his name was Charles. Charles Shearer. And there was a reason for that. There's a reason for that, but it's not that important. But he had the dual personalities, different names,
Yeah.
Ultimately, I found out he had 3 wives, and later on a 4th. So maybe the different names were for different reasons. And he comes in, and we small talk really quick. He says he's going to go inside for a minute, fix himself a drink, clean up. I asked Linda, I said, I thought his name was Charles. She said, oh, he just uses that name. Like it's nothing. So I said, okay, fine. So he comes walking back in now with 2 scotches. He hands one to me.
There you go.
I don't think I ever drank scotch in my life up to that point.
17.
17. When I was
full hair in your
drinks,
chest.
it was vodka and orange juice, or 7 and 7. We always drink at 17, And so he comes back in, and I sip it with him. I'm telling him how good it is. It's burning my throat. So anyway, we go out to eat that night, and we sit down at the table, and he has 2 partners with him, a lawyer and an accountant, and somebody else. There was Marty, the lawyer, the accountant. There was somebody else. I forget who it was, but I forget his name. But he was one of the partners also. But the 2 main guys were the accountant and the lawyer. And Greg opens up. Well, first of all, we walk in the restaurant, and I see he's treated like the king. He's got a table waiting. The wine's already there. Everybody comes out to see him. The cook comes out, who's the owner. The son is behind the bar. He comes out. All the matron, everybody comes over. We go sit down. Linda gets the same treatment, like she's the queen. We sit down, and he gets right to business. He starts talking about the company, And he says, and he looks at them and he says, and Larry's going to be our East Coast sales manager. Not we'd like to discuss this, or maybe you guys will accept. Larry will be. So I walked out of there, the sales manager. And I'll fast forward a little bit.
I can relate.
Again. The job is almost a setup. All the local restaurants and businesses are not going to say no to him.
Right.
So I go in and I say who I am. I want to check your extinguishers and sell your products. Oh, yes, please, whatever. You know, if I went into a place cold, because some stores I would have to go in that we didn't know to have a relationship.
Right.
And if they said no, when I come back at the end of the day and tell Greg, well, I got all the stores on the list, and then I went to these other two, they weren't interested. He said, all right, you go back there tomorrow. So he calls Carmine. Carmine comes in. He says, go say hello to these two people. Let them know I'm involved in this business. So he goes. The next day I go back. They couldn't wait to give me the business. You know, so I was building up this resume, and I was doing good. You know, after about
You're killing it.
6 months, I'm making decent money for 18 now. I did turn 18. And we're still going strong, me and Linda. That's where my life got paranoid, because now I know who he is. And this is still going on. And I'm telling her, he's going to kill me if he finds out. I mean, I'm not a dummy. I know this life a little bit. You know, like people that, you know, in the neighborhood and stuff. I lived around the block from Carlo Gambino, you know, back in the day. But she insists he would never, ever hurt me. Anything that I love or makes my life better, he wants to see me happy. This was her approach. And it's true to an extent. I mean, he just gave her everything she wanted. Again, he had 2 other wives. This was his young trophy.
Gotcha.
So it all worked out. I think I made his life easier at some point. So finally, she tells me she wants to tell him about us. Now I'm a basket case. I said, well, when you do that, I'll never forget. I said, I want to wear a bulletproof vest that day that you're going to tell him. Because, you know, and she just made it like it can't happen. There's no way. So in hindsight, she had already told him. They already had this somewhat of an arrangement. I don't know this for a fact.
Yeah.
As I get older and I understand the world, I could see there had to be more to this. And finally one day, we're driving to the club. I would get to his house, or I'd be there when he came home. He didn't know I was there the whole night, I thought. But he would be coming back from his other wife in New Jersey, and I'd be sitting having coffee with Linda, like waiting for him. So we get in the car and we drive to the club/office. It's a social club. It's his office. And on the way, he starts asking me, or telling me, that he feels I'm very mature. I can handle this conversation we're about to have. I know where he's going. And my stomach is turning. Because I always said I would never admit it. I said, there's no way. No matter what he says, I can't admit it, you know. So as we get closer to the club, he's saying, you know, you haven't been right. You've been acting a little strange. I was paranoid. You know, I wasn't showing up.
Rightfully so.
I thought he was going to kill me at some of the meetings that he asked me to go to. Because there was a lot that had happened that made me real close to him. I was meeting other captains and bosses and wise guys. And I just was afraid one of those meetings is going to be my last, you know. So we get to the club, and we start walking in, and now we stop talking until we get to the back office. And we're the only two there early. We go in the office, and I'm sitting at the desk on this side. He goes behind. He's got this big seat like a throne, and he's sitting there. And he's working his number papers out, getting his business set up for the day. And he's continuing to talk again now. And he says, and, you know, what I'm going to tell you, I says, you've got to believe me from my heart. I mean it. He's telling me. I mean, you know, and I'm getting convinced. So he says, I know about you and Linda. So now, I'll never forget. This was it. I was supposed to deny it. And I said to him, almost verbatim, because I've said this so many times, I'll never forget it. I says, Greg, I have a lot of respect for you, and you are far from an idiot. I said, but only an idiot wouldn't see what was going on. So I made it like I knew he knew, you know? He hits the desk, he stands up, big smile, laugh. He puts his arm around me, we walk out front, okay? We get to the front of the place, still the only two there. And we would always do that, go stand out in front, there's parking meters, and we'd lean on it and get the sun and stuff like that. And he says, this was the first rule that I was read officially. He said, I'm okay with it. He says, but if anybody outside the three of us finds out, you and I will be killed.
Because you should explain that's a rule
It's
in
a
Cosa
rule.
Nostra.
Yeah, in Cosa Nostra, which is what we call the mob,
Right.
our thing. Other people have other words for it, like mafia and things like that. We never use those terms. One of the rules is you can't sleep with a friend's wife or girlfriend. You have to respect that.
Right.
And that's understandable. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But, while I'm at it, there's also a rule.
So why would then Greg / Charles
we would both
get
get
charged?
killed? Because he's allowing it.
Ah.
He's actually encouraging a rule to be broken.
Got you.
So no, he was more wrong than me, if that's the right English.
Got you.
Yeah, you can't say wrong.
Understood.
Larry,
Yeah, he wasn't wronger.
So, one of the other rules is no drugs. It's broken constantly. I mean, I knew hundreds of drug dealers that were doing it on the sly.
Right.
Or not so much because they were turning in money to the bosses. One of them is you're not supposed to talk to the law in any way, shape, or form. And wait till you hear this about my boss. You're not supposed to go against the family. You never go against the boss. And, what did John Gotti do?
That's supposed to kill a boss.
He killed his boss,
Yeah.
right. So anyway, my boss, Vicarina, the acting boss later on, tried to take over the family. So it caused a war and caused our downfalls. So all these rules are broken constantly. So I learned that it was just do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah.
That's the type of life it turned out to be.
So Larry, I wanted to ask you this question, and you've probably been asked this before, but you're a young guy. You're a teenager when this is going on. But did you ever cross your mind that maybe that they were swingers?
I didn't even know what a swinger was then.
I just want to say you're a young guy.
I was too young. I wouldn't, I look at my mother and father, how they were, Catholics and workers and normal people. Most of my friends and their families, I would have never. The closest thing I saw to swinging was that TV show, Three's Company, years ago.
Oh yeah, that was a great.
I mean, yeah, and they had to make the guy that he was alternative.
Yeah, John
Otherwise,
Ritter, the late John Ritter. Yeah.
So, no, I never thought about that. And honestly, even as the years went on, I don't see that as the case at all.
Okay.
Because I was pretty much exclusive with her for almost 10 years. So it's not like, and I could have been there every night with her if I wasn't, courteous of him needing to be at home sometimes, So there was really no time. But he did have three wives. So he had to split his time up.
Oh yeah.
So I don't even think he had time to swing. I mean,
Were there other three wives? Were they in in the spotlight too? Were they back in the back,
No,
and he only had the trophy wife out and about?
Pretty much she was the only one out.
Gotcha.
The other one, Connie, was his first, probably from 18 years old. He was with her, had 4 kids. I got very close with her and her kids and the family later on. And they were in the horse business out in New Jersey, so I owned some race horses for a while with them.
Yeah.
Trotters. And the other one, Lily, I never met, but she was an Israeli beauty queen. And she was wealthy on her own. And she lived in Vegas and Manhattan. And they went back. So a lot of times he went to Vegas. A lot of times he went to Manhattan. And those nights, like I said, I would just live with Linda. And they weren't in the spotlight at all.
Gotcha.
Linda was, because she was in the heart of Brooklyn, Bensonhurst, and it's mob infested. It's clubs all over the place, and it's known for that. You look at the movies like Goodfellas, Bronx Tale. Which other one was out of Brooklyn? A lot of them.
A lot, yeah.
Sopranos is
Sopranos,
Jersey,
yeah.
but
Jersey.
it's the same.
Right.
Same thing. Yeah.
So Larry, I wanted to lead up into this question, and it kind of ties in with combat sports. So I have a good friend that was an old teammate of mine that I managed in his fight career, who was heavily involved in the life, and the fight fans will know him. Very colorful guy, the New York badass, Phil Baroni, and his father was an NYPD Gold Star detective that ended up, he was becoming partners with a mutual friend of ours, with Johnny Alite, and got heavily involved with the Gambino family. And he told me a quote years ago. He said, if you want to be a gangster, get a badge. And Greg Scarpa, the Grim Reaper, had a badge, right?
Yeah. Well, that was one of the, I alluded to it before when I said one of the rules is you can't talk to the law in any way, shape, or form. You could never take the stand. You can't make deals with them. They're the devil to us. And I'm going to lead into that a little better. So now I'm in with Greg, and the supply company blows up, literally blows up. The warehouse blew up. Mm-hmm. Again, years later, I'm wondering if it was for insurance money or whatever. Mm-hmm. I don't see how it just blew up, but I'm without a job. So he puts me in the number business with him because I'm good with numbers. He knew that right away in my figures, which led to sports booking, and I became a powerhouse in the neighborhood for sports books and horses. And I put it all together, and I embellished it or enhanced it is a better word. Enhanced it is what I meant to say. And I wound up making a lot of money in this business, and now I'm meeting other people. I'm getting eventually proposed to be a made guy in the family, which means I have to start doing some work outside, other things like hurting people. So little by little, I start doing this. I'll give you a perfect example of how you brought along. The first thing he asked me to do was to give a guy a flat tire. So he gave me the ice pick.
All right, I got one down. I got that off the checklist. Let me see how far I can go.
Yeah. So I give the guy a flat tire. The next day in the newspaper, man killed fixing flat. So I was sort of involved. I go to the club, and I know better than to ask questions or act nervous. So I just made and the newspaper's right there for everybody to see. Mm-hmm. So I just made nothing happened. It was a test. Mm-hmm. So now the next thing they may ask you to go to the hardware store and buy a shovel. Just bring it back to us. So I buy it and find out that a friend of ours is buried in Staten Island. Yeah. Little by little, eventually you're gonna watch him shoot somebody, which I did. Somebody called him a rat, and in life, if somebody calls you a rat and you're not a rat, they can't prove it. You could kill them on the spot, and no repercussions. So I saw him do that. And then he's going to ask you to shoot somebody, and he's going to watch you. So it's just a gradual thing. Now we're going years in. I'm around in 3, 4, 5 years. I'm probably 24 now, 25. Mm-hmm. And I'm around beatings. I'm around some hits. Right. I did a hit or whatever, But our family, who was led by Junior Persico, he just passed away not long ago, is a legend in the New York mob world. It's like Al Capone. I mean, Junior Persico's name, if you read it or follow up, is legendary as, like I said, Al Capone, any of those old names that you hear, Luciano, stuff you see on TV. He goes back, way back. As a matter of fact, when I played the Hitman in The Irishman, I did a hit that Junior Persico did in real life. Him and Joey Gallo, Crazy Joe Gallo, killed Albert Anastasia in the barber seat. It's a historical hit. And I was one of the hitmen, so I was either him or Joey Gallo. It doesn't matter. I was just hitman number one.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
That's kind of cool.
So he winds up getting convicted on the commission trial, which was a very big case in New York that Rudolph Giuliani spearheaded. And he dismantled the mob after that. It started the downfall. So Junior gets 135-year sentence, okay? And Scappy, sitting next to him, who was my captain at the time, our captain, our cruise captain, it just made the papers. He looks at Junior, and they're both in their 60s, and he says, well, we only have to do 2/3. And that made the papers. A lot of things made the papers on our cases. Later on down the road, one of my co-defendants was Jojo Russo, and his godfather was James Caan, Sonny from The Godfather. Yeah. Who comes walking in at our hearing? James Caan. The prosecutor looks at his other prosecutor, and it came out in the papers also. He says, I thought he got it in the phone booth. Like it was a real life thing, So a lot of this funny stuff was going back and forth for years as they were taking us down, But to get back to Junior, so he gets this sentence. Now he's going to be away for the rest of his life. But one of the rules is also a boss is a boss until he dies, steps down, or gets voted out unanimously. And none of that happened. So he was the boss. He anoints Vic Arena to take over as the acting boss. Vic winds up he's a weaker guy. He really didn't deserve that position. And he listened to other people, including John Gotti, who had his own motives to have Vic take over the family officially, decides he's going to do it. and he starts doing some very treacherous things, killing guys in the family for no reason, putting the consigliere out there to try to convince all the captains to vote him down. That doesn't happen. They kill the consigliere, which is unheard of. Consigliere never gets killed. He's the friend to the family. He's the guy that if they call you at 2 o'clock in the morning, tell you come to this meeting, if he calls, you go. You have no concern. I mean, you trust the life and the rules. You're not getting hurt. They killed him because he couldn't get everybody to come over, and they blamed him for trying to take over the family. Meanwhile, he was taking orders from Vic, sends a message back to Junior. So anyway, we go to war. And now this is where I got labeled the hitman, because it was kill or be killed. Okay, I was deeply involved now. There was no turning back. You know, with a boss like Greg Scarpa, you can't show weakness. And he was also trusting me. Just me and my partner Jimmy, we were the loyalest guys to him, and because most of the crew was in prison. His son destroyed the crew with selling drugs, and they were all doing big time. So we were the elder statesmen now in our crew, and I felt this sense of loyalty to him that I needed to be there to protect him after all he did for me all these years, you know. And I remember my father telling me I should get out of town, go to Florida. They got the house down there, just get away from all this. And I said, Dad, would you do that to your guys in a fire? Would you leave them? He said, it's not the same. He kills me. He's so right. He just passed away.
Sorry to hear that.
Oh, God. I bring him up, I get choked up all the time.
I would too.
Okay. So, anyway, we get this bloody, vicious war, killing back and forth, getting shot at, wearing a bulletproof vest. And I was part of killing 4 guys during the war. And ultimately, we all get arrested. And I'm fighting the case for a year. All kinds of attorneys. I'm sitting here in a Berman attorney office. Maybe I could have had them help me too. But I went to, I had several investigators. I mean, a fortune, as you know, they don't come inexpensively. And my family helped me, and I had a $2 million bail, so I wasn't getting out. Actually, they wouldn't even give me bail, even if I could make it. They just revoked the bail privilege for all of us. After about a year, it comes out that Greg may be a rat. He may be a government informant. And I say maybe because I got called into a meeting while I'm in prison by Vic Arena and some other heavyweights from other families, saying, did you know anything about this? And I went after them because I said it's a lie. I said, and I had people had to break us up. The next day, it comes out in the newspaper that he's in front of the judge pleading for leniency. And he said all I did for the government over the last 30 years. So he was a top echelon informant for 30 years. Yeah.
Wow.
So now they call me back in again. Now I have to put my tail between my legs. But they were thinking that I knew about it and I was part of it. It goes back to that first rule. If you know about it, I mean, you're as guilty. So they were already lining me up for the chopping block, you know. So it started me wondering my future. They take me right off of that floor. The government, they're very manipulative. I don't know why I was on the floor with him in the first place. There was so many of us split up. He was my number one enemy, Vic. They put me with him. You know, and this whole thing starts playing out. Then they put me down on another floor with Junior Persico's son, Alley Boy, who was the heir apparent. He was going to take over the family. And it comes out, and I'm talking to him about it, and he tells me and my father knew about Greg for 20 years. Now, that stuck with me because he was bad for 30. You knew for 20 years. So that must have been something that happened that you guys said. For 20 years, they knew he was an informant.
And Larry, it was a benefit to them that he was an informant, that he had a badge, because he could carry out things with immunity.
Well,
right?
Yeah, well, yes. Yeah, they could never openly admit that, the government. But yeah, they gave him carte blanche. And the family now would give us, through Greg, and I was part of some very, very tough hits to pull off. I mean, where there's a guy dancing on 86th Street, it's like the most populated area in the summertime. There's cars, kids going by with their loud music, kids dancing on a corner. Just a big party, 86th Street. It's not, Saturday Night Fever, if you remember the movie with John Travolta.
Right.
Okay, he's walking down 86th Street, and he goes to those nightclubs. It's right there. So there was probably, this is an exaggeration, on 86th Street, 200 cops on horses, walking the beat to keep, and we would be the ones to pull up, get out of the car, shoot the guy, and like we had a badge, you know. So, plus, he was a tremendous earner. So I think, like Matt just said, they used him to their advantage, and they allowed this. So now, here I am facing life, because you allowed this, you know. So it becomes a very, you know, now it's like, what do you do? So that's, at that point, I called my lawyer, and I said, you know, they asked me, they wanted me early, I turned them down. I says, what, you know, what do they want from me? And he says, honestly, they don't even need you. They got Greg, they got Carmine. The list was, they said the Colombo family clogged up the system. Well, so many guys trying to talk to the prosecutors. So finally, the corruption came out. His agent that he was talking to was corrupt. They were partners. So I had a lot of intricate details. I didn't know who it was, you know, but the detail I gave them led to the corrupt agent. You know, I had phone numbers, we had frequencies for the walkie-talkie, different things. So ultimately, that saved me from a life sentence, and I wound up getting 10 years. But, you know, this is something he said, and he always told me that. You can only play the cards as they come. You know, you have a hand. And that's, you know, at the end, I said, what am I going to do? He's bad. They want to kill me. There's absolutely nothing for me to stand up for. I have a young wife. I have a kid, a 1-year-old baby that I didn't see until he was 11 again. Even, you know, so it's, it's.
So Larry, when you talk about this now in retrospect, this was so many years later, and you think about Cosa Nostra in America, and you talk about you're not supposed to have any dealings with the law enforcement, not supposed to talk to law enforcement. Right. That's like the old idea. And you look at how it was beneficial to the crime family, to the Colombo family. I liken that to what's going on now, like with the cartels. And the reason that the cartels are so successful is because they are intricately involved with the federales. And they work with and that's why I say, so do you think in retrospect, and just looking at strictly from your analysis, that it was a bad idea to have that rule as far as not having any involvement with authorities?
I think they had to have the rule, but I also believe that it's just broken like every other rule, and they know that. And I think go way, way back to Hoover when he was the director of the FBI. He wouldn't acknowledge there was mafia. He wouldn't acknowledge it.
They had dirt on him.
It's not true.
Yeah.
So why would he not? Why would they come to Luciano, the boss, back then, to help them with the ports during the war, World War, I guess II, one of the world, it had to be II, because they were bringing stuff in through the ports, and he had the influence more than the government to stop what was going on. Then what they did was they let him out of jail for that, and they deported him, but then he came back. So there were deals made.
Sure.
I think you look at another popular one recently, Whitey Bulger.
Oh, yeah.
Out of Boston.
Boston, yeah.
You know, his brother's a politician. He's the filthiest criminal in the city. They have an FBI agent liaison who winds up getting 20 years. That's how bad he was. Maybe 40 years. He got a big sentence. He got a sentence like we get. So they treated him the right way. And then my boss, and then to hear the big boss of the family knew about it, you know, allowed it for whatever reasons. And he did some things he shouldn't have done either, like take the stand. He took the stand. He represented himself, Junior Persico. So he tried this ingenious approach. He said he was taking the stand as his lawyer. I'm not taking the stand as the defendant. And it didn't work. I mean, the guys in the family frowned because they all said if I'd have done that, he'd kill me. But he's doing it. He admitted there was a family. He admitted he was a made guy, but he didn't admit he was the boss. He didn't want to get that extra 100 years. He would have got only 30 years. Yeah. So, you know, it's not true. Their life isn't true.
When you backtrack to talk about working with the government, something really infamous. Joe Bonanno talked about working with the Kennedys, and he was friends with Joe Kennedy, helping to get JFK elected. So there's always that's been a rule, but there's also always been the idea of getting your hands into the government as well.
Yeah, well, absolute power corrupts, right?
Yeah,
Ever heard that?
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolute power
So,
clips, absolutely.
Well, here's a funny thing. You brought up the Kennedy thing, and we, I might as well, it's a good time for me to say what I'm doing now,
Yeah,
if it's okay.
absolutely.
I'm on the board of Mob TV. It's a new station, just like Netflix. It's a streaming station, Hulu. And my partner, my producer, Joe Paletto, along with Terry Winter, who wrote American Gangster, Wolf of Wall Street, The Sopranos, Boardwalk Empire, Illustrious, is also the top two guys. We have Ted Turner's tech people that got TNT and TBS. So this is happening in January. It's going to be on. But what I was leading to, one of our guests that I had on, I'd be hosting a talk show, and one of them was Joey Gallo, and it's a girl, Joanne Gallo. They call her Joey Miami. You met her. Matt met her. She has a great story. She goes all the way back to guys like Sam Giancana, Santos Traficante. Santos is Tampa, Giancana is Chicago, but Florida was always open. And she was in Miami, and she was a bag man for them. She would run around bringing monies and different things. Ultimately, she winds up working with Noriega. Now that's a historic, a merit. So this is, again, how does this all happen?
Yeah.
So she told me on the interview, okay, that Santo Traficante said to her, because they got real close, whether they were having sex or intimate, she said, I don't know. She never said that.
No,
but
you won't offend me, no worry.
she was at his house all the time. And he said to her, okay, now, I didn't even bring this up. I wasn't looking for this, but it's like a little blockbuster. And you guys are hearing it even before it comes out on Monday.
We're hearing it first. You hear that?
This is an exclusive.
No, that Santos looked at her and said, who do you think had Kennedy killed? Now, that's a major, major theory. That Traficante, Marcello from New Orleans, those old Dons.
LBJ was involved with Carlos
because,
Marcello.
Yeah, because of what you said about them turning. The Kennedys were supposed to be their friend.
Sure.
And then the kid, Bobby Kennedy, I guess it was, the younger one.
Bobby turned on him.
He became a prosecutor and wanted to attack them up. Even going over to Hoover's head. So that's something, it's funny she said that, because that's a theory, and if this guy made that comment, and she's been on, and I don't think she's making it up. I don't.
Sure, but let me interject in that.
Yeah, there's nothing to gain from
Larry, let me interject some information into what you're saying here. There's some great book by Roger Stone where he talks about Johnson and Carlos Marcello. Carlos Marcello was a bagman for Lyndon Johnson. I don't know how many people knew that, the gangster. And there's so much history there with Johnson's involvement, who was vice president, and wanting Kennedy gone, and how that ties in with the mob. It's a fascinating subject, but I mean, there's definitely more than the official story there.
Oh yeah, no doubt, no doubt. So like I say, hearing that was something. But I had corrupt cops on. The most corrupt cop in New York history was on my show. One of the FBI agents on my case came on. Some of my rivals from back then who now we met up and we're friends again. People don't understand how that can be. But, we were friends. The thing that happened is what caused us to become enemies, and now it's all over. We're back to where we were, know. And I had an actor come on too. Eventually I'd like to get Armand DeSante and Mike Madsen. I'm pretty friendly with them, and I think they would come on. But Craig DeFrancia, who was my fellow hitman in The Irishman, and we became real good friends. He was in Power. Did you ever see that TV show, Power?
No, but I keep hearing about it. But I
he was in that. He was also in The Green Book. If you saw The Green Book, great movie.
I saw that. That was a great movie.
Award.
Yeah.
So, and the reason I had him on was because my opening is I tell everybody, my guests are people who have lived the life or who have been affected by the life. And he was affected in a positive way because he's making a lot of money portraying us. So I said, the life helped you.
Yes.
So it's not all bad. And then what that opened up was some of the good parts of what we did, how we kept the neighborhoods nice back in the day. Yeah. And you hear that all the time. people go back to Brooklyn now and they say it's not the same. You guys, when they got rid of all you guys, you could walk down an avenue and never have to worry about getting run. Now it's I don't even want to go to New York.
Yeah.
I was in New York in April, and I was helping a buddy who was an attorney that was running for councilman there. Was doing writing his speeches and managing his campaign, and I couldn't wait to get out of there, man. And I grew up 40 miles from Manhattan. I couldn't wait to get out of there.
The last time I was there was with Frankie. You just met Frankie.
Yeah,
Frankie's
Frankie.
a friend of mine. He's got a TV series coming out on Mob TV also through us. It's called Mobsters versus Monsters. Okay, these are 4 guys bigger than Matt. I mean,
this show is wild.
Bigger than me.
Big, yeah.
Okay.
Ex-mob guys, very capable guys. One of them is a serious martial artist too, and they go looking for paranormal things like Bigfoot, the New Jersey Devil, ghosts. Mm-hmm. They want to go to that Area 50 something.
Area 51.
Area 51.
Yeah, Area 51.
And the thing is, they all believe in it. Sincerely believe it. Mm-hmm. Okay, Frankie has researched Bigfoot, and when he talks to me about it, it's like he's so serious,
passionate.
No, he says, Larry, I'm telling you, there've been 2 million sightings, and I don't disbelieve, but I got to see it.
Yeah, I'm with you on there. Like, all right, like I don't not believe you.
Yes.
I don't know if I fully believe it yet.
So anyway, and he's got the personality where. You ever see like The Naked Gun or Airplane? Those funny movies.
Leslie Nielsen.
Yeah.
I'm not
You're
big.
Too young. You're too young.
I'm not a big movie buff though. I watch Forrest Gump like over and over again. That's pretty much it.
Did you see The Wizard of Oz?
Yes.
Okay, so you're good then. But he has that dry humor where he'll just look at you and say, "No, I'm serious." And I'm waiting for him to bust out laughing, but he doesn't.
Right.
No, I know.
But that makes it for comedy, though.
No,
that makes it good for comedy.
It is. It's comic relief throughout, but they have all the equipment, expensive equipment. They talk to the dead.
They do the ghost stuff.
I'm serious.
Yeah.
That's when he talks to the
See
dead.
what you did there.
They got all this stuff, they have 4-wheelers, they go deep into the woods, 30, 40 miles into the, nobody goes there.
Right.
So if you hit a tree fall, you don't hear it.
Yeah.
That's
where they go.
But they're there.
They're looking for Bigfoot.
Anyway, this show's coming on. Hopefully, we want to get a mob game show, a mob cook show.
I love it.
And then they're also getting licenses for mob movies, but we're trying to go outside the ones you always see.
Larry, what's your favorite mob movie?
When I answer that, I always say take The Godfather off the table.
Okay.
It's the classic of all classics.
I have to interrupt you because it's one thing. It's very embarrassing for me. I have never seen The Godfather.
Oh, we got to watch it.
And now I'm 33 years in, and now I'm like wearing it as a badge.
Yeah.
Like I'm just like I've
I
never
like
seen it.
Godfather 3. I'm probably the only one. Everybody
I've
hates
never
it.
seen it.
It wasn't the classic.
Never seen it.
Here's what you got to do if you want. There's something called the Godfather Epic, because when they did The Godfather, and then they did Godfather 2, they were going back and forth to before Godfather 1.
Right.
So it's a little harder to follow. If you get the Epic, it goes in order. So it tells you this incredible story.
Okay, so it's like Godfather for Dummies. It's
No.
right up my alley.
No,
I'm
it's just
sign me up.
Sign me up. But listen, I know. Let me
So your
answer-
favorite,
Yeah, I'm
go
going to
ahead.
tell you. I take that off because it's too easy to say.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Once Upon a Time in America. It's a Robert De Niro, but it puts together the Italian mob, the Jewish mob, the Irish mob, and tells a really good. It's not based on a true story, but it's loosely based on a true story.
Right.
And every time I watch it, I get a little something different from it, and it's really it's a long movie. It's probably when they used to have intermissions, like maybe a 4-hour movie.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's one that I can watch over and over. Bronx Tale, I love. I love the Bronx Tale. And as a matter of fact, I got to see the play after I was done.
The one-man show
with De Niro. No.
Oh,
it was a screen. It was off Broadway.
Because it started as a one-man show.
Yeah,
with Chaz.
yes.
Yeah.
And De Niro gave me 2 tickets, and they were great seats up front. It was phenomenal. So I like that a lot because it reminds me of my life a little bit.
Yeah.
My father was the fireman. He was the bus driver. Good little kid turned out to become a.
That was
so-
Chaz's life.
yeah.
A lot of people don't realize.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And so I like those a lot. There's one that may be a little cheesy, but it's called Mobsters. A young cast. What's his name?
When did that one come out? Was that.
I want to say 80s,
Okay.
maybe 90s. Who's the guy? God, I can't believe I can't think of his name. He's a good actor. He plays Luciano and Maya Lansky, how they got together. But it's very, very educational. And it's good. It's entertaining. I forget all their names. Some of them are popular. Like, one of them was
I'm writing all these down.
a
Right now in my head to
heartthrob
go
from
home and
back
watch
in the
them.
80s also. But anyway, that's worth seeing Mobsters because it's just a nice, easy, but the most realistic of all of them is Sopranos.
Oh yeah.
It's based on a lot of true events. The boss is not always Don Corleone. Sometimes they're these half losers that are just fighting their way through every day, like Tony Soprano was. You know, arguing with his uncle over who's bigger in the family, and
Right.
you know that stuff really goes on. And all the drugs, they were using drugs, and you know, so
You know what's my favorite mob movie? My Blue Heaven
Oh,
with
boy.
Steve Martin. I love that.
Yeah.
And then you talk about, because the genre is so big that there's comedies.
Right.
My Blue Heaven was a great comedy. Wise Guys with Captain Lou Albano and Danny DeVito.
Oh, that's hysterical.
That's a great
Can I
movie.
give you a little trivia on
Yeah, yeah.
the one before? My Blue
Oh,
Heaven.
My Blue Heaven?
You know who wrote that?
No.
Nick Pileggi's wife.
Oh, she did? Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Because
great.
After he did Goodfellas,
Yeah.
okay, they were popular, and they came back to him, and she had this idea, and I guess they did it together. But
Great movie.
so-
Oh
Yeah.
man, some of the greatest lines. So he's going in the frozen food section. He comes
Oh.
up to the girl and he goes, "You got to be careful. You're so hot. You're gonna melt all this stuff." It was a great movie.
yeah,
And
Steve
another
Martin.
great mob
'Cause
comedy.
I've heard that.
Another great mob comedy was.
Analyze this.
Well, I didn't like that
No.
that much, but I'll tell you what I did like. Michael Keaton, Johnny Dangerously.
Yeah, yeah.
With Joe
Yeah, you like the
Piscopo. With
slapstick ones.
Piscopo.
You like
Oh
the
yeah.
slapstick,
Yeah, what a great movie.
Analyze this was more tongue in cheek, but yeah.
Yeah, he got you farganisa holes. He
Yeah.
calls them farganisa holes. Oh, what a great movie.
I love
Yeah.
it.
So,
Yeah, so I mean the genre is so big. You've got comedy but you just talked about The Sopranos, and there's actually a scene in The Sopranos that was based on your case, Larry, right?
yes, yeah. When it came after a big hit that was done, the Nicky Black hit,
Yeah.
it sent shockwaves through the arena faction because this was their future consigliere. He was a heavyweight, he was a big captain, and a feared guy, you know. But he sent a message out that he was going to kill me through my uncle Albert, who was under him. As I said, it's a small world.
All right.
And he also had made a threat at my partner Jimmy that he's going to leave him wherever he sees him on Avenue because he had a tuxedo shop on Avenue. So these things were getting back to us. And we'd made him our number one target. And, you know, my Uncle Albert had told me, I went to see him to find out. He says, no, it's true. And he says, but he wanted me to know blood is thicker than water. Like he would never be.
You should mention your
involved in it.
Uncle Albert was an associate with the
Yeah.
Colombo.
Yeah, a long-time associate. He had good fellow status, but there was a technicality. And after he got out of the Army, he was a military police in the Army, something like that. And because of that, they could never make him an official good fella. But he had more respect than most good fellas. He was there 100 years. He died at 95 years old.
So you had someone that had told you that someone's trying to kill you. Was that? Well, I guess what is like? Were you in fear the most of your life?
Well, at that point, I was already being shot at and shooting.
That,
but this guy.
But was there any one of those times where you were getting shot at and shooting? Like they were like, okay, this is it. This might be it, or
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah?
Bullets are pinging around you, and
Yeah.
you know, and there was a time where a whole van of shooters was following me, and I was all alone. I didn't have my vest on because I was going to New York that day, Manhattan, and the only thing that saved me was they thought I was going to make a left to go to Greg's house, like I always do. I didn't. I made a right because I was going to the train, and I saw this van make a U-turn, and I had a little pistol on me. That's all I had. And they followed me several blocks, tried to make, finally I pulled into a gas station. I had to make a move, got out of the car, and pointed the gun over the car at them. There's 4 guys in the car and a bunch of shooters in the van. None of them got out. That one bullet could have been hit them, so
Okay.
nobody moved.
right?
They drove down the block. I parked the car real quick, ran up to the train station, and I'm watching them. They're having a meeting a block away. They come back again. Now they had a plan probably to surround me or whatever, like I was still going to be there. You know, they came back and they just saw the car, and now they were looking around. They were getting nervous. They took off. So no, this was happening almost on a daily basis. So anyway, Nicky, we made him our number one target, and somehow or another, the very next day we found him. He was back by his club where he should have been, and we got him. And this was it's the number 4 or number 5 hit in the history of New York, the Nicky Black hit. So you can read about that. It's in the book, whatever.
Yeah, great story about that. So how did that tied in with the Sopranos?
Well, that's what I'm sorry. That's why I says we could use the whole weekend here. So now, after that hit, there was questions because Nicky Black was under intense surveillance that day. There was like 6 FBI cars, New York detectives following him everywhere. He gets a call. Mm-hmm. They all get a call from headquarters. That's my boss's partner. He's the supervisor. Mm-hmm. Come back to headquarters. Because my boss called and says, we got Nicky Black in our sights. Okay, now, I didn't know that for a fact. This came out later, that one of those calls, he was always on his phone. Mm-hmm. We didn't have these type of phones.
Right.
We had a shoe phone back then, like Get Smart used to use.
Yep.
Okay, the stockbrokers and stuff, so it was a big phone, a portable phone. So anyway, he was constantly on it. There's questions to this day, if one of those calls was to his partner, the FBI guy, that cleared the way for us to kill this guy. That puts their whole, there's a lot of things they did that were corrupt that puts their cases in jeopardy. Mm-hmm. So a lot of guys got a break when I did what I did. Mm-hmm. But, so now we get Nicky. The partner, the FBI guy, Lynn, hits the table after he hears about the hit. And he says, we're going to win this thing. We are going to win this thing. So other agents in the room took notice of that. So they started watching him.
Like he's part of one side.
Yeah. So now they started watching, and now they knew, they started knowing something was wrong. But to get to absolute point, in the Sopranos, the same thing's going on. And they get a big hit in the Sopranos, and the FBI guy that's sort of friendly with Tony bangs the desk and says, we're going to win this thing.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And it's funny because my wife now, Kelly, when I first met her, when I came home, I didn't like anybody to be surprised by a newspaper article or whatever. So if somebody got close to me or friendly, or we got, my students, I didn't give them details, but I says, you may hear things that's a past life, whatever. I told her, I says, I have a lot of things you need to know. Yeah. And I told her about that case. That one thing that happened. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because she was a vice president of the company, and they would talk about the Sopranos every day. So she went in and she told them she didn't want to hear anything about the show because she wants to see it for herself. So one day she goes in and they're talking about, we're going to win this thing. Now she already knew it because she read my book, my transcript. It wasn't out yet. Mm-hmm. So she knew a lot of these things from the book. And so anyway, I would be open about that. I wanted them to know. I didn't want it to be thrust on them. I was a trainer, personal trainer. Yeah. So I would tell, I had this one older woman. She was really old, 72. All right? And I trained her for about 15 years to 87. She's still alive, God bless her. Mm-hmm. Up until 90 years old, I went to her birthday party, but then she moved to Georgia, so I haven't heard from her in a couple of years. But I'll hear, God forbid, because I trained the whole family, all nurses and doctors. Yeah. And the first time I started training her, she's doing lat pull-downs, okay? And I'm behind her, and maybe I'm holding her shoulders to make her do it right or whatever and talking to her. She says, you remind me of the Sopranos. So I was, look, I says, you know what I told her? I said, shut the fuck up and do another set. She busted out laughing. She loved it. This was her personality. She knew everything about me. I told her all about my life. And, I told her, here's how it happened. I told her I wasn't an angel. I said, because she thought I was the best thing, her best trainer. She's talking to everybody how great this guy is. And I said, listen, I'm feeling a little guilty now. I said, I'm not that great of a guy. I said, I have a little. So she says, I don't care. You're an angel. She didn't want to hear it. Then I trained her daughter. And I'm walking with her, and she's doing the same thing. So I said, Charlotte, they're both Charlotte. I said, Charlotte, I had a lot of headaches in my life. I said, and now she's a nurse. She says, oh, there's things to help you. I could get you, some medications. And I said, no, I don't mean that. I mean mental headaches. I said, I was in trouble with the government. And she says, I don't care. I don't want to hear it. They just, so they so blessed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So Larry, one of the things that I talked to you about before, and I say in the opener, what started out as a secret society. I kind of think about, I'm from Connecticut, and there was just a Netflix thing that they did on AJ and James Benza, and I know both of them. I know AJ. We actually dated the same girl, Julia D'Amato, but they're very quiet about their stuff. James was a Genovese guy. Connecticut, Rhode Island, always very quiet. The New York guys, aside from like a Carlo Gambino, always flashier. Do you think that it went wrong with the guys like Gotti that were so out there and forgot about a secret society?
Well, you're right. But the real problem is there's 5 families, and there's too many. So there's a lot of egos. There's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of arguments. There's a lot of bravado. Where when there's one family, they're a family.
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah, that's true. In different
and they don't
states,
have
yeah.
to. But you're right.
Yeah.
John Gotti was one of the worst things to happen to Cosa Nostra. And
Gunnar and I talked about
their
that.
whole family
Yeah.
knows it.
Yeah.
And his son's doing movies and documentaries now. So he's not part of the family anymore. He's doing what I'm doing. He got away from it, and he's telling his stories. And there's a lot of good reason to tell these stories.
The stories
not only
are great,
entertaining,
especially now
they're educational.
because it's exactly
Yeah,
now because it's years later. But I'm talking about more if you were to go and you were to backtrack, and that's a great
Carlo
point
Gambino,
about the 5
Carlo
families.
Gambino was the last boss of all bosses.
Yeah.
He had the family for 25 years or so. He in charge. Junior Persco had the family 25 years. The Chin's family, the Genovese family, they had a 20-year run with no problems. He was the boss. Then Gotti killed Castellano, who had a good run, and the whole family fell apart within 5 years. Sammy flipped, then everybody, headed for the hills, and they ruined it.
And Gotti wanted to be a movie star too.
Yeah, well, Gas Pipe, Anthony Castro. Him and Vicamuso took over the Lucchese family, which had a good run before that. And then they, 2 or 3 years, dismantled, okay? Our family, after Junior, Vic took over, 5 years, all over. And all we did was fight for 3 years. So every family, they became cowboys.
Sure.
There was no structure, there's no grooming. I was groomed. I was educated from 18 years old, the ice pick, every step of the way. And if I would have said something there, they would have never asked me to buy the shovel. But I came in, I kept my mouth shut, so, and I learned. I just learned how to be around other people. And Greg once told me, he said, when you understand this life, he said, when you're there, he says, they'll smell you when you walk in a room. You won't even have to tell anybody what you are. And I'm going to say this, it may be a little egotistical. I think I had gotten that to an extent, and I saw a couple of examples. Well, right now in my life, I get more respect than I ever did. I walk into restaurants and they come running over to me. I'm a good tipper too, so I think they remember that.
Yeah.
But I think they just get that feel of something, and it's probably from the Brooklyn and the life and everything. And you don't need that life to make a lot of money. I've between my gym and the restaurants and things I did legitimately since I've been home, I'm making a good living. So you don't. Those are the two misconceptions. You don't need that life for respect or to make money. So, but I want to go back to your point.
Sure.
What was it?
My point was my original point was just I mentioned the Galanti because you ask AJ who his dad, he says he's a hardworking man. He doesn't date. In New York, they're much showier, and the whole idea of being a secret society kind of got lost.
It did,
that was my idea.
Right.
Was that to the detriment?
How they got
of
dismantled?
Yeah.
And they, we did. We talked about that. But I want to not close the show on this, but on the point I made.
Yeah.
I'm with my new wife Kelly, and we go to Manhattan, and I'm going to be testifying against this corrupt agent. So this is a major news. I'm in the papers every minute of the day and stuff. But I'm dressed down. After court or whatever, we're at a hotel, and I asked the guys in the hotel or the maitre d', where's a nice place to go to settle down? We want to sit, have a little wine. Yeah. He said, go to the 555 Club. It's right around the block. He says, you go up to certain floor, and you can see Empire State Building, which it's like you can touch it. It's right there, beautiful. And it's a rooftop type of thing. So we get dressed. I put on jeans, nice shirt probably, no sport jacket, no tie. I'm not trying to look like anything. Kelly's dressed nice, but not elegant. We walk around the corner. The line is a block long to get into this place. So I said, let's have some fun. So I just walk right past the whole line. Now, I'm going to make a joke. I know exactly what I was going to say to them because I didn't get to do it. I was going to say, what are they giving away in here?
Yeah.
And as I get up, there's these two huge bouncers, okay, and they got the red thing there. And there's a smaller guy in the middle, and he's on the phone. He sees us walking. He goes like this. Let them two in. And he goes back to the phone. Let them two in. So now I get in, and the bouncer says, you have to spend $100 up there. I said, you got champagne? And he says, yeah. I said, tell him to have 2 bottles of Dom Perignon for me. So I went upstairs. We sat down. The bottles were waiting for us. But why did he let me in? Or her? Maybe he liked her better than me. I don't know.
Yeah,
We'll never
his
know.
wife is gorgeous. That could be it. But you have the swagger, though. You've got that, and you've got the movie star style too. Doesn't he have have like an act? You look like
100%.
kind of like a Cary Grant almost.
They're going to give me a big head. My wife says that. She says my hat size is going to grow. We'll get a car with a sunroof. No, I take it in stride. I really do. I don't think I'm egotistical about it. I said that as humbly as I could because I think I was taught that by him.
Yeah.
And I'm not the only one. I mean, most of the guys around him were schooled. And they were going to be, when you walked in, they knew. So,
I want to get to something because this whole genre of podcast, this mob genre of podcast, it just exploded in it kind of the post-corona time. And I want to ask you some things on that. And I want to mention some names. There's something going on right now. You just did Valuetainment, which is right here in Boca.
Yes.
And there's something big going on. Evan and I were just over there at the studios with Valuetainment. There's something big going on that they call it Mafia States of America.
Yeah.
And it's with Sammy Gravano and Michael Franzese. And just kind of ask your opinion on this explosion of the genre. What do you think the appeal is? What do you think? I mean, I talked in the opener about the movies. What do you think is the appeal of this genre?
Well, first of all, most people are interested or curious about the life. They're curious about what motivates somebody to get into that life. And the stories are true. They're true stories about, murder and violence and drugs and sex and all the stuff people really like to watch in a movie. I mean, whether it's true or not. And I think, eventually it's probably going to be too much out there because I'm starting to see some Jerry Springer types where they just...
this fellow by the name of, he was part of your family apparently, Anthony Raimondi?
Ramon, no, I don't know him. He sent a message to somebody that I know him from an area, and I sent the message back. I have no disrespect. I just don't remember. I mean, there's so many people that you meet, and I don't know if he was or he wasn't. I don't know him personally.
Well, I would have to ask you because he's part of your family, the Colombo family, and I find him to be a very good host and broadcaster as well. Is Michael Franzese.
Oh yeah. I didn't know Mike in the street. I met his father a couple of times. When he was out of jail, he spent most of his life in prison, like 70 years in prison.
Did,
Wow.
The father, but he died at 102. He just got released the last time.
Wow.
But Michael's well spoken. He was educated, made a fortune, and then he made a deal with the government when the time came because
he made a fortune in the gas business. He had a gas game, which was kind of like a white collar crime.
It was taxed.
He made a fortune that. Now I also obviously had to ask you about sort of a contentious figure. Is Sammy the Bull Gravano?
Yeah. I grew up in the same neighborhood as him. He was a little older, and he was a heavyweight while I was upcoming. But you got to realize like I said, there's 5 families with 100 years of background. So the newspapers and media made him the underboss. He was one of 100 underbosses. Okay, just like John was one of hundreds of bosses.
Yeah.
They're equals, you know. But the papers made him bigger than he was. He did make a lot of money. I think they overdid it on his hits. You know, he was in a position very early to order the hits or orchestrate them. I don't think he pulled the trigger 19 times from what we hear.
Sure.
I think he'll admit to that. But again, the papers made it like me. They said I was involved in 25 hits. I didn't pull the trigger on 25. I used an ice pick on one of them. You know,
Right.
I hit a tire. I killed a tire. You know, but eventually, you know, and look what they did to me. I was really a little low-level guy.
So you're saying that the media doesn't always tell the truth? No way.
I was on the rise. The FBI called me a rising star. I was an associate of interest in 1983, I think. So by the time a few more years went by in the war, I was now proposed, and then ultimately I got made by the family, our side of the family. And whether it was for my heroic acts during the war or other reasons, I think there's many reasons. But I certainly deserved it. So did my partner, Jimmy, based on that life.
Right.
So they did it for us, and 6 months later we were in prison.
Now, Larry, there's another gentleman that I've done some stuff with. I did a press conference with him up in New Jersey at the Showboat Casino. It's a really interesting story, and I'm going to ask you about the guy. I mentioned Phil Baroni was his father, and Phil actually lived with this guy when he was at Hofstra, wrestling at Hofstra, and the famous story was he was stabbed up in the back of the head when he was collecting money for Johnny Elite. And Johnny A is a very big name in this genre as well. We were trying to get a fight for Gotti III to fight Phil Baroni, and Gotti III called Phil out, given the history with the Gambino family early in his career. That fight hasn't happened. But Johnny A. Light is a guy that I actually met through you originally. I had met him before. We talked about years ago when I was cornering one of Phil's fights at Mohegan Sun. We both vaguely remembered it, but I've got to reintroduce him through you. What are your thoughts on Johnny A? Because he's considered a polarizing figure to some as well.
Well, John, if you're John Jr., John Gotti Jr.'s best friend for many, many years, that should tell you enough, okay? It's like me being Greg Scarpa's right-hand man. What else can I say that's going to impress you and being in that life?
Sure.
So John was that tight with him. That means he was in the house. He got to know John Sr. He was probably at the club every day. He was a capable kid. He did a lot of work for them.
Junior was best man at his wedding.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, you know, the only negative stuff that comes out is because they're arguing now, John Jr. and Johnny A. Light.
Yeah.
You know, and other people. That's what I said. There's some clowns out there. Getting back to the original thing that are going to possibly turn people off to some of the podcasts.
It's becoming a little bit too much. It's becoming oversaturated.
They're doing nonsense for ratings. They're causing
that happens
problems.
with everything.
They're lying, like the Jerry Springer thing.
Yeah.
You know, they're coming out and calling people out. And now they want to have this big fight, between Sammy and Michael Francesi. I mean, that's becoming comical.
Well, I saw a clip, and I got to tell you this, because I did MMA and I did pro wrestling for a while too, so I know how to get a crowd. And these guys were like Bush League pro wrestlers the way that they were doing this thing.
Really?
I mean, it's embarrassing the way that they tried to manufacture this
they really did
argument.
Fight?
No. It was a verbal argument, but it was online because they're trying to build up their show. And I'm watching this, and I'm watching it with a trained eye, and I'm like, this is cringe. This is like Bush League stuff, guys. Come on, because you know you see through a lot of that stuff with reality shows. You could see it's manufactured. It's like you guys don't need to do this.
Well, you know, the other thing is this: the ones that are getting set, like this is a nice studio. You have a green, so obviously you can have a backdrop or something. You know, a lot of these guys are doing it. And you see their dirty laundry hanging behind them.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so you gotta, if you're really serious about it, I would imagine there's a way to earn on it. My producer said they don't get enough. YouTube gets all the money. I don't know. I'm just what he told me. That's why he went and he did.
Unless you're like a Joe Rogan or a Valuetainment.
Right.
The advertisements is where you make the money, really.
Common. They got, well, Joe Rogan's got tons of media, but they have beautiful studios. They're very professional. They probably didn't need that to make a good living. They're doing it, you know.
Right.
So but it's an opportunity for some too, you know. And like Alan, we mentioned Alan Gunner.
Yeah.
He's got a great.
We should tell people who he is. He's a mutual friend of ours. He's in Detroit. He's part of the Tocco family, which is the original crime family in Detroit, and he's involved with Larry for a sports betting show. And I brought in a gentleman, Colin Crandall, who we were on his show last night, MMA Power Hour. He has all the fighters on there going to fight that weekend.
Right.
And he's a master at picking winners for fights. He's 80 to 85%.
Yeah.
So I introduced him to Gunner, and he's been hosting.
Yeah, and Alan, don't forget, has another podcast that he does. Covers everything from politics, which is a tough thing to get into. Don't do that. Whatever, stay away from that. And other things,
Too late.
Local current events. And I go on a lot with him because he's a good kid. He wrote a book called To Be a King. It's not a true story, but it's a great story.
Yeah.
It's a great pop story.
Larry, I got to interject real quick because you just said a word that you have a great definition of from Latin. The word politics. Tell us your definition of politics.
Okay, if you break the word up, poly means many, ticks, blood-sucking insects.
Yeah.
Many blood-sucking insects. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
That's perfect. I love
but
it.
that's as far as we're going in politics.
Yeah,
Let's
so-
go. No. I couldn't resist that. All right, stop. We said we wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll
So,
tell you though, it's a wild ride, man. Your life has been a wild ride. But you talk to us to kind of close out, unless Brittany has anything. What is your life like now? Talk about a day in the life.
Well, you've
2021.
been
That's a great
living
question,
with me for a
actually.
couple of days.
They don't know.
I'm very serious about. I know. I'm very serious about my different businesses. I have some online things, consulting that I do probably from 6 to 9 in the morning. I get to my gym about 9. I'll work out. I'll go for a run. I'm not training anybody anymore because it won't be fair to them with my schedule. I'm not around enough. So I turned it over to my son and some other trainers. I have like 5 or 6 trainers in there, and they run the place for me now, so which is great.
I've met him. Great trainers,
yeah.
this guy. Yeah.
And then, so I'm semi-retired. I don't fight anymore. I don't spar anymore. I got to look nice for the cameras. So
That's important.
Yeah. And I'm not, I'm 61. So
Right.
it's getting to the point where I got to take a step back as far as, but I still train and work out for other reasons now, not for any tournament type of things. And, we travel a lot. Like I had to go to Vegas to film the show. I'm down this way a lot. So next time I come with my wife, if you and your husband, we can meet somewhere, maybe in Aben Louis or something.
Oh, absolutely.
Or one of the good steak places. Yeah, we'll do that. You're all invited to that for sure.
Yeah.
But I come down. I go to Lauderdale a lot. I go up to New York where my family is, or actually New Jersey now, which is even worse.
Yeah.
I just had to go up there to film the thing. It'll be on the 27th of January on Dateline 2020. This January is going to be a big culmination of all the years I've been putting into this, between the talk show and being on 2020, all in January. So, my son's older now. He's 30. So we have a lot of time. I'm being semi-retired. I'll never retire completely.
You're
Yeah.
enjoying the
I'm
life.
never- I'm
You're
enjoying
living the
myself.
life.
I says I've been blessed. When I came home, a great family, which is big.
Yeah.
I go again. And as some of my friends come home, I'm trying to help them.
Yeah, that's
little time.
Oh,
they
yeah.
don't have families. They don't know what to do. So they got something to do. They reach out, and there's a group of us that still talk and help each other.
It's the best thing.
Right.
That's the best thing. Especially, the best thing you can do is to help your friends when they're down and out. There's nothing
Yeah.
worse than when you
No.
have a string of bad
Of
luck
course.
or something bad, and you look and your friends aren't around.
We've all been down there.
Yeah.
And I know when I was down there, and but I had my family. And I really apologize.
No, it's all right. It's understandable,
So-
And I could say, to kind of close out the show too, one of the questions that you had asked him, and you said mob podcasts and mob things are becoming so popular and saturated. And I could say, from like an outsider looking in, and I got to be honest, I've never even seen The Godfather. I'm not one of those people that see every single mob story or anything. But one, I am interested in a lot more now, and two, I can say that outsider looking in after hearing what you had to say, I think what is a part of like the fascination is hearing about how everything was secret, but not really secret.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
kind of like
Right.
everyone never talked about it. Number one rule of Fight Club, no one talked about Fight Club, is everyone knows, but no one talks about it.
Right.
It's like they know, but they don't know.
Right.
Brittany,
And I think that's a cool.
Yeah, to that point, Brittany, this shows you how crazy things have changed, right? So when my grandparents, my mother's parents were Sicilian, right? So my grandfather, he would get so angry if anyone used the word mafia.
Yeah.
And I was told when I was younger, a fable, because Sicily was an island. It was a conquering route. It was separate from Italy, right? So it was conquered by the Greeks, by the Normans, by the Arabs, by the French. And this story of the origination of the word, and if you're a Sicilian kid, you probably heard the story. When the French conquered Sicily, there was a young, because it was always an underground world in Sicily. That's kind of where the mafia, that's why I hate when they say Russian mafia. There's no Russian mafia. It's unique to the island. So when the French were conquering them, there was a young woman who was raped. And this is the way the fable goes. The mother ran through the streets screaming, "Mafia, mafia," which means my daughter. And they got hold of this guy who was a prominent guy with the French, and they beat him to death in the streets. And that's where the word comes from being a conquered people. That's the way I was taught the word. So that's why I don't like when it's used and misused. America, Cosa Nostra, is like, as Larry knows, is our thing, is like an offshoot of that. But think about how crazy it is. My grandfather, he was big with that group, that Joe Colombo had, didn't want the Godfather movie to come out because it was very quiet. You never talked.
Well, they got permission to make that movie.
Yeah.
And
but fast forward to now.
If we ever do a part 2, we'll talk a little bit about the Italian American Association.
Yeah.
Because I got some real information on that and some other things that I learned later on through my boss, who now I know it's accurate because he was working for the government.
Sure.
So, yeah. So.
You really nailed it earlier when you said that we can talk here all weekend, because honestly, I really do feel like we could sit here and talk all weekend. But it was absolutely a blast having you guys on. Like I said, now I'm super interested. Cannot wait to read your book, The Life. And if you,
for you, for sure. Yeah.
I know, I love it. Thank you. I'm definitely gonna have you sign that. Thank you so much, Matt, for your time. If you want to just go ahead and say it.
Yeah. Well, the book I self-published. I wrote the whole book myself. I had an editor to help me at the end to make sure I dotted my I's and T's and all of that. But I went to 2 authors and they gave it back and said, "You don't need me." They said that. So that was a big compliment.
Very great.
Nick Pileggi said, "You wrote a mob classic to me," and he wrote Goodfellas, Casino, My Blue Heaven. So anyway. You could get the book at www.larrymazza-thelife.com. See, it's true.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know what that felt.
Neither have I.
www.larrymazza-thelife.com. Every book comes signed by me. I earlier I said I'm not being presumptuous.
Yeah.
I think it's a nice touch. I do that because I think soon it's going to be well known. We may even have a wine after me someday.
Well, we've got a man in studio that's going to be a guest on a coming episode, Massimo, and he's got some amazing wines.
Good.
Love that. You had me at wine.
Yeah.
All right, thanks so much, guys.
Thank you guys. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Larry.
All right.